Greetings, family. Y'all know I got lots of random thoughts lately because there's just a lot going on, right? Okay, I'm gonna start with this. I was on a live the other day with, I was on Global Green Books Live, Sister Kiddist, and there was a sister, Isha Kiba, and she mentioned something about a code. We were having a conversation about a code of conduct and people being on code, and you know, I had a random thought during the conversation, right? Like, whoa, like we need to stop right there because I don't know that everyone knows what this code is supposed to be. And, who came up with this code? And does the code only apply to certain people? Is the code created by certain people? Are they only following certain parts of the code? Like, what is this whole code thing, right? Like, it's a new, for me, it was a new term that I really didn't hear people talking about until more recently. Um, my understanding of a code was something that people lived by, right? Something that would determine your level of loyalty, your integrity, how you conduct yourself, right? And we know that when we talk about how we conduct ourselves, that codes are presented in different ways, right? There is supposed to be a code of ethics, right, for attorneys. Well, we know how that goes, right? Because unfortunately, lawyers have become synonymous with liars, right? I remember being proud telling people that, I was in the legal field and I was not a liar, that I knew how to craft a story, right? Because in my mind, I was crafting a story for the person that I was representing that would be favorable to them. I often felt like I was representing, the low person on the totem pole, if you will. The things we tell ourselves in order to maintain this so-called non-existent code, right? Then we know we have medical professionals, and we could talk a lot about that with everything that's going on with this pandemic, right? We have these medical professionals that are supposed to follow a code of ethics. I imagine that the labs creating these vaccines are supposed to follow a code of ethics, but we know that whatever code these folks are following as far as this vaccine is concerned is not the same code that's applied to us, right? So is the code applied differently to different racial groups? Is a specific code illustrated or orchestrated by someone? All these questions just come to mind. What about the code for the police? Don't policemen have a code of conduct? Right? We have all these professional organizations that are supposed to have these codes of conduct that no one seems to follow. So why do we still keep talking about a code? I mean, I think I look at it like there's either good people or there's bad people, right? You either going to be someone that has integrity and morale and morals, or you're not, right? And let's not be confused because I don't want to confuse anyone. This is not a college lecture, right? But I want to make the difference between morals and morale. Morals would be those rules that you follow that you think make you a good person, right? Some people might base that on religious beliefs, but we know religion is kind of flighty, right? Because people choose what they want from the Bible, especially when it's convenient for them. They have their own interpretation, right? Morale is something that a leader instills in people, right? The captain of the ship has he invokes morale and he encourages morale to keep these folks from throwing him off the ship, right? That's morale. So there's a difference between the two. Um, so back to our code thing, we talked about all the groups that are supposed to have conduct code or a code of conduct. Um, and then we talked about how we're talking about how this is going to apply to us, right? So I thought it would be interesting if I went back to the original code of conduct for Black people, because I don't know that we had one that was formal before this. So I want y'all sitting there going like, what is she talking about? We must have had a code of conduct when they took us off them ships, when they stole us from our motherland. There was a code, right? Whether it was a secret language or secrets that were told through song, messages that were given through song, or um, ways that we communicated through different people that were able to travel from one plantation to another. There was some kind of code then, right? And the code was clear, at least for some people. I bet you to Harriet Tubman it was clear. But was it clear to the house slave what the code was? Or were they just agents to kind of reveal what the code was? Food for thought. So I'm going to go to the formal code, which is from the Black Panther Party. We know that there are members still alive in this world. Um, and I just want to give thanks. I want to take a minute and give thanks for all the struggles, all the sacrifice, all the losses. And then I want to give thanks to our ancestors who are not here with us today, but because of their sacrifices, their lives they sacrificed, the humiliation, the torment, all so we could be where we are. We have to give thanks. Somebody say, I say, Ashe. So we have to do that. We're going to talk about the Black Panther Party rules, though, because I think they had it. And if they had it, this should be the only code we're talking about, right? So I'm gonna run it down to y'all because I think some people said it was like 10 bullet points, or I'm not really sure, but I'm gonna read them to you. So the first one was no party member can have narcotics or weed in his possession while doing party work. Notice it said while doing party work, right? What you do on your personal time is your business. But what you do when you're representing a people, that's a whole nother story because now your door is open, right? It is open for people to have dirt on you, to tell your business, to act like you're making poor decisions because you're under the influence. Talking about that. No party member can be drunk while doing daily party work. Some of us think it's cool to brag about, how much we're drinking or how much we're indulging in the party life and doing things we shouldn't be doing. And you're leading as an example. Again, what you do behind closed doors is your business. But when you bring that to be public knowledge, expect to be judged, right? Expect for that to be used against you when someone is upset with you. They had a third one. Any party member found shooting narcotics would be expelled from this party. So, certain things were acceptable to do privately and certain things weren't. And we know that the drugs might have different names, but we still talk about the same thing, right? So, the fourth one. No party member will violate rules relating to office work, general meetings of the Black Panther Party, and meetings of the Black Panther Party anywhere. So if they say violate rules relating to office work, I'm sure they mean sharing information, not keeping things confidential, not addressing issues within the party, right? 5, no party member will use, point, or fire a weapon of any kind unnecessarily or accidentally at anyone. So didn't say you couldn't have a weapon to protect yourself. It said you don't use it against each other. But some of us, we won't point a gun at somebody, but we will point poisonous words. We will point vicious lies. We will point conflict, right? Sometimes your verbal warfare and your psychological warfare can be worse than pointing a weapon at someone, right? 6, no party member can join any other armed force other than the Black Liberation Party. So if you are a member of this tribe, you're a member. That doesn't change. You can call yourself what you want to call yourself, but the understanding is we are one. That's what I take from that. 7, no party member can have a weapon in his possession while drunk or loaded off narcotics or weed. So if you're under the influence, you should not be operating a firearm. Sounds reasonable, right? Number 9, when arrested, Black Panther members will give only the name, address, and will sign nothing. Legal first aid must be understood by all party members. So we call it legal aid, but they called it legal first aid must be understood by all party members. So they must have had some sort of system in place that you had to know what your legal rights were, and that when you walked in there, you didn't walk in there and spill all the beans and tell everybody everything, because you didn't know how that information was going to be used, right? Sound like snitches get stitches to me, but that's another story. Then we got number 10. The 10-point program and platform of the Black Panther Party must be known and understood by each party member. Okay, so it sounds like the 10-point program might be a pledge, right? Or is it a pledge, or is it the actual mission of the Black Panther Party? And we're going to find out. Party communications must be national and local. That was number 11. Now we have the World Wide Web, right? So we know that things are international, not just local. Although we'll find when we're trying to give important messages to our brothers and sisters on the other side of the world, there are interruptions. 12, the 10-10-10 program should be known by all members and also understood. So see the difference between knowing something and understanding something? You could know what a group's mission is, but do you understand what the mission is? Because when you understand, when you overstand, you don't let petty things get in the way. You stay focused on the mission. All finance officers will operate under the jurisdiction of the Ministry of Finance. Now, this is interesting because maybe Sierra Leone could have used this one recently, huh? That if there's a finance officer, folks from the upper levels of government don't get to come and take what they want without going through a chain of command that gives approval for those funds. Each person will submit a report of daily work. Wouldn't that be interesting? So you are accepting people's time, money, and energy to keep a business going, to keep a program going, to keep an operation going. How are you accounting for that? Is it all for naught? I know I personally don't like sitting in meetings where nothing's being done or you don't see the result. You don't see any productivity, right? We can compare that to YouTube, right? How many people are on YouTube just talking and not doing nothing? Not doing, you don't see any action. All you hear is a lot of talking and complaining. What programs do you have on the continent? What programs do you have here? What kind of commitment have you shown to your people outside of running your mouth? Yeah, I'm going to talk about it. Yeah. 14, each person will submit a report of daily work. Each subsection leaders, section leaders, and lieutenants, captains must submit daily reports of work. So this is showing the importance of not necessarily a chain of command, but definitely people being able to have a checks and balance system so that no one can get out of hand because they have that balance. You don't need to figure everything out because you got other people with other expertise to take care of those issues where you may have deficits. 16, all Panthers must learn to operate and service weapons correctly. 17, All leaders who expel a member must submit this information to the editor of the newspaper so that it will be published in the paper and will be known by all chapters and branches. That's deep. So if they have an issue with someone, it is printed, it is made public, and an explanation has to be given, and everyone has to be notified that they are to beware of this person for these specific reasons. That way, no one's in the dark, no one's confused. You don't have to worry about no agents infiltrating. And if you're wrong in what you're doing and expelling folks, you get checked as well. 18, political education classes are mandatory for general membership. That would have been a hard one last year, right? Because we had such a split in folks who were committed to the political system of the US and folks who weren't. And I imagine on the continent it's the same thing, right? Folks that are committed to certain parties, no matter what happens with them, and folks who are committed to other parties. And I wonder if those divisions are intentional. If you're supposed to be a party for the people, why do we have time to have different views if the mission is the same? I don't know. Food for thought. Only office personnel assigned to respective offices each day should be there. All others to sell papers and do political work out in the community, including captains, section leaders, etc. So only office personnel are supposed to be in the office. So that means you are, again, that checks and balances in place, right? That way, if something happens within the office, you know who you can hold responsible. Can't be pointing fingers because it's obvious that A, B, and C was in the office. Communications. All chapters must submit weekly reports in writing to the national headquarters. All branches must implement first aid and or medical cadres. We talked about cadres previously. At least I talked about cadres on my podcast, right? Podcast members should know when I talked about cadres, I was talking about Africans Must Connect the Dots, part 3. If you want to hear part 3, you got to go to the podcast. And we're talking about cadres, which were supposed to be leaders that were chosen, that were supposed to be above reproach. They were supposed to be follow a code of conduct that was not that of the colonizer, right? Did not use the same methods or measures to get things done. I'll move on to 23. See, everyone in leadership position must read no less than 2 hours per day to keep abreast of the changing political situation. And we know many of our leaders are avid readers, right? And the interesting thing about that is that many of our leaders are educated people. Many of the people we follow are educated people. There are people that have gone to college. There are people that have educations. Some of them are just people that have studied profoundly, but we know that in some way they're educated. So I don't want you all to get it twisted. There is nothing wrong with getting an education, especially if you can get a free one, right? The issue with getting an education is when they get you caught up and teach you, train you to work for other people and not be an entrepreneur, right? Or you use your education, you have an education, but you don't help your community. See, so go ahead, get your education, but do it in a way that you're not paying for it and that you're not tied into a system that wants to keep you on a rat wheel, right? So I would never tell anyone don't pursue educational goals if that's what you want to do. There are so many ways to be educated, right? Going to a higher learning institution is not the only way, right? We know that trades are a profound way to receive an education. But when you talk about being an educator of people, a leader of people, where are you getting your facts from? You can't just be grabbing stuff out the air. And you definitely can't plagiarize everything you hear from other people. What is your interpretation of the words that you're hearing? How do you apply those words to how you're living your life? Then you're able to pass a message on to other people. So, the Panthers were on to something here, y'all. I mean, we already know they were on to something, but this is deep. It really is. I'm just going to pause for a second because I think my battery's dying. So I'm going to stop here and then I'll come back. 23, everyone in a leadership position must read no less than 2 hours per day. That was the last one we left off on. 24, no chapter or branch shall accept grants, poverty funds, money, or any other aid from any government agency without contacting the national headquarters. Now, if you all don't know the easy answer to that, we know that that is about once the government gets their hand in something, then they have control over it. I was just listening to something, I think I was listening to a news report from a black channel, and they were talking about taking money from the government and what that meant, right? It means they get to make the rules pretty much, right? It's no longer something that might have been your idea when it started, but once those funds come in, they're going to come with strings attached. And are you prepared for those strings that are going to be attached to that money, right? Um, then we're at 25, which is all chapters must adhere to the policy and ideology laid down by the Central Committee of the Black Panther Party. Now, ideology would be a belief system for anyone who's not sure about that word. And we have the belief system, right? The belief system was about defending yourself against police brutality and protecting and supporting our communities, whether it's here or on the continent. It applies across the board. The last one they had, number 26, was all branches must submit weekly reports in writing to their respective chapters. So the branches spread out nationally, right? So if there was one in New York, one in Chicago, one in LA, they made sure that they were submitting these reports so that people were making the same efforts and on the same pages. And if there were challenges, they were reporting those challenges, even though it was a branch. It was one, there was branches in different places. It was one tree, and the roots were the people, right? 8 points of attention. Here's what we need, right? All of this got to be put into a special code for us to go by. Okay, so we got speak politely. That's the first one. Pay fairly for what you buy. Return everything you borrow. Pay for anything you damage. Do not hit or swear at people. Do not damage property or crops of the poor, oppressed masses. Do not take liberties with women. If we ever have to take captives, do not ill treat them. So we are humane in our actions toward others and each other. Then we have 3 main rules of discipline. Obey orders in all your actions. Do not take a single needle or piece of thread from the poor and oppressed masses. Turn in everything captured from the attacking enemy. I don't know, y'all. I read this stuff and it just brings so much emotion because so much blood was spilled from these ancestors, from these leaders to make sure that these rules were in place. So we don't need to reinvent the wheel, right? Go back to the old documents. It tells us exactly what to do and how we should proceed. We don't, it's not, the wheel's not broke. You don't need to fix it. Go back to the original document. There's your code right there. So now I don't have no more questions, right? I don't have no questions about what code this group is following and what code this group is following and what clique is following. No, all of y'all are wrong. Go back to the beginning. It's here. It's right here. It's been laid out for us. If everybody's operating the same way, there's no questions about what we need to do or if we're on code. Go back to the beginning. It's that simple. It really is that simple. I'm amazed with myself that I figured out. I broke the code. There's only one. It ain't 100. It ain't 20. It ain't 10. There's one. There's one. You go back to the beginning. We know that it is so important that we all get on the same page because we can't depend on the media unless it's our media, right? Media controlled by us that does not depend on the funds of the government. See the difference? We have to control the media and we have to control the politics. As long as these foreign governments have their hands in our politics, we're not in control. I don't care what it looks like from the outside. We are not in control if we don't control our politics. They said it from the beginning. The way to manipulate us and to control us is to get control of the media so they can control all the propaganda that keeps us divided. And they can control the politics to make sure that they are always benefiting and that we are the underdogs in that process. So I don't want to keep harping on this. Y'all know I did Africans need to connect the dots. Um, 1, 2, and 3, right? Africans, we must connect the dots. And now this one here is Africans, are we on code? And I'm going to end with that. Blessings.